All right, folks, we're live here with Jamie after the game, and I want to apologize as far as my voice goes. I'm still kind of battling the flu. I'm pretty much over it, but the voice still isn't quite good yet, so hopefully that'll be fixed here shortly. Jamie, I mean, I just, I don't even know what the hell to say. I mean, it is what it is. It's as bad as you could possibly hope for, I think. I don't know. I don't even know what to say after that. I mean, how it's a complete and total meltdown. I just don't get it. Your thoughts?
Well, I think I get it based off of I think they just got killed with tempo in the
Yeah.
second half, and
Tired. Very tired
they were just
defense.
gassed. They were
Oh,
gassed,
no doubt.
right? And I think this was the game too. The way things are going, they just absolutely needed like some sort of turnover or something to happen earlier in that half to get them off the field. And the offense needed to help them play complementary to give them a rest too. And this is the game where you saw Clarence Lewis. I mean, we'll get into kind of his matchup. Obviously, he didn't have a good game against Tay Martin, but I mean, that was just a perfect example of like, this guy's never got off the field the whole year. And then in this game, he was just gassed and you could just see it. And you could just tell all of those guys, they were just fighting it. I mean, it's not often too when you see a guy like Hines who plays with his hair on fire and really is like, I mean, he's an all out effort guy. Right. And he was just dead at the end of the game. Right. Like, and that's what it was like for all of us. They couldn't get those guys off the field. So the normal rotation, that wasn't working for them. And then on offense too, like the receivers were gassed because those guys, really this game more than anything. And I understand why they had to throw the ball so much in this game, but
they shouldn't have to is a problem. You know what I mean? You shouldn't have to.
And I think really the main thing was, I think you look at Tommy Rees and how he called the game in the first half and the game plan, and it was a great game plan, right? They took advantage of all those free access throws, and they were just dinking and dunking down the field. And then obviously Oklahoma State made adjustments, and then they played too high a lot, and Notre Dame couldn't run the ball on them. And that's the thing. It's like, that's that's football 101. If you can't run the ball when a team's playing too high against you, I mean, you're dead in the water, right? Yeah. And that was really what the main thing is, that they couldn't do that, and they made them. I mean, they were one-dimensional the whole game, but it was like set up for them to win in the first half, and then it was obviously they needed to be able to do more running the ball in the second half. And I think this is a game too where, I mean, you would have really missed Kyron Williams, because he would have at least broken a tackle on a certain point and took like a 20-yard run or something.
Well, and they at least would have ran if they had Kyron. Yeah. They didn't run because they didn't have Kyron. And they know that the backs that they have are just average. They just are. I mean, Chris Tyree, you blow on him and he falls over. I mean, that's just the reality of it. And he's got to get tougher. He's got to get tougher and have better balance. I mean, he just falls over. And Diggs is a patient player, but just not the level that you need in order to play it against, some of these better teams. And there's nobody else that you can spell either. Without Kyron, these guys are good kind of spell type backs. If you got a bell cow, you bring these guys in and they're solid. But now this is who you got next year, right? This is who you got. Most of these are, a lot of these O-linemen are coming back. I mean, if Patterson comes back, this is who you got. So if you can't run, Jeff Quinn better not be your O-line coach. I'll tell you that.
He's not going to be the O-line
and I don't think he is, and we know that. But he better not be. All right? And look, it was just kind of frustrating because I agree with you. I think Tommy had a great game plan, and it was executed well, and they did a good job in the first probably, two or a quarter and a half for sure. And, would have liked to seen a few more points there in the first quarter. But hey, that's still pretty good against this defense. That's really good. But the second half, zero. Absolutely nothing. No ability to move the ball. No nothing. And when I think about this, look, they were kind of in a bad situation because the other team was running tempo. So it made it really hard for Notre Dame to suddenly go to tempo too, because if you go to tempo, then your defense is right back on the floor, on the field, if you don't convert. And man, I'm telling you, it was just a tough situation. But you can't run. You can't have an offense like this. It just can't work. You can't have an offense like this. And I'm not blaming Reese. The defense gave up 1 billion points. There's no reason for that. There's just no reason for that. And I don't know. I mean, if this was I don't know. Question for you: when did you see a lot differently defensively from what they've done in the past compared to what they did this way, and the way Mike Elston called this game?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I would say that Mike Elston, I think one thing that Freeman, especially later on in the year, he just had a really great sense of when to say, second and 9, this is a pressure play, right? Like, and I think that's the one thing that you can't, it's one thing to say, like, I know how I'm going to call this and this is what this looks like, and I know how to.
It's all about the feel, yeah.
But it is the feel, the timing of it, and I didn't think that Mike Elston had a great feel of that in this game. And like, even if you look at the one play where, it's 3rd and 22 after that, I think it was the face mask, right? And I get it. They're trying to get a sack there, trying to get him out of field goal range. Completely understand it, but you're bringing the house there. If that guy doesn't slip,
that
might have been a first down.
No, I know.
So it was, that to me was, I mean, that just showed some inexperience as a play caller. And I think, I mean, if this was like Mike Elston's audition, I mean, how can you say it didn't go great, right? It didn't go great.
This is not a very good Oklahoma State offense. It just isn't.
That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, even if you look at it, and I'll give tons of credit to Oklahoma State's receivers, because those guys made some great catches.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Spencer Sanders, I mean, as good of a runner he is and as good of feel he has to escape the rush, and I think obviously he did that tremendously in this game. I mean, this guy couldn't put the ball on the money if his life depended on it. Like, he's just basically throwing it up. I don't know how many easy free access throws he missed.
Yeah, quite a few.
Because he was just way off. Or guys had to make miraculous catches.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's a good player. He's definitely not a good passer. And I mean, I have to give credit to those receivers there for kind of helping him out, but they never seemed to find a way, especially in the second half when they knew they started running Sanders, and they never had a solution for that at all.
No.
They never had a solution for it. They never had, even when they were rushing for especially, they never had a way of like climbing into the pocket. And I understand you're trying to take some certain things away from him, and that's why you're dropping out and not spying. But it became to a point where you almost had to change something there, and they didn't. And I think, to me, that kind of showed with Mike Elston today.
Excuse me. I think probably the biggest disappointment for me, Jamie, is when things got down, they just didn't respond well. That was a real disappointment for me. I was surprised that when things started going bad, they couldn't stop what was happening. And the entire game, Foskey makes a great play there where they get an opportunity, but by stripping the ball there, which was fantastic, but they just kept moving the ball on and on and on, and they just couldn't stop. Nothing could stop. And very, very frustrating. The thing that blew my mind, too, is just how slow Notre Dame looked out in the back end in the secondary and the linebacking core. Just slow. And, again, I think tempo had something to do with it, but they're just slow to begin with. And, we've said for a long time, Clarence Lewis, not an elite corner. He just isn't. And if you don't have anybody to spell him, it's going to be even harder for him to be effective. And, they got to.
Well, if they had somebody else, they would put him out there. So
yeah.
I understand why people would be frustrated watching him, but it's not his fault that, he's out there in those situations. Like, believe me, like they would put somebody else out there, especially when a guy is struggling like that and on tilt. But they really don't have anybody. So that's why can you imagine if Cam Hart couldn't have played in this game?
Yeah,
too?
I know.
Oh my gosh, it would have been even more of a disaster.
But the thing that's crazy about it is if a guy's giving up that much anyway, I don't care how bad the guy is that's behind him, you got to put him in there. You got to give him a chance. And if the guy is clearly gassed and is not effective, you got to yank him. I mean, you just have to. And put somebody else in there. If he gives up a play, he gives up a play. The other guy was going to give up a play anyway. I mean, Clarence Lewis didn't make an entire play the entire day. So, you're basically playing with 10 guys. And again, I'm not saying this to disrespect him. I think that he's a good football player playing out of position. I just don't think he should be a corner. I don't think Notre Dame has a corner on their entire roster other than Cam Hart that can play at this level. I just don't. And look, if I'm Marcus Freeman, whoever is on defense that is starting, whoever's on any of these positions that are starting, clean slate, man. Clean slate. I tell those freshman corners, hey, you're going to have a great shot to start. I'm going to give you every opportunity to start because what we have right now is not working, and it won't work. Yeah. It won't when you're playing a good team like this. They're just not physically capable of. I'm not physically capable of playing corner either. It's not, a disrespect. It's just they're doing the best job they can. It's just you don't have anybody. So, I don't know. It's frustrating. It really was. I'm just completely perplexed how you play so bad in a complete half of football. And literally on all sides of the ball. I mean, really poorly. Special teams even. That's just not good. I'm just not.
It really just spiraled the whole way if you think about it.
And then nobody stood up and did anything, and that's what concerns me more than anything.
And I think because there were so many opportunities, especially whatever. I don't mean to single out Jay Bramlett because there was there's a million guys out there, whatever. But Jay Bramlett had a very Jay Bramlett game.
Yeah. And so did Jonathan Dorr.
Yeah. And Jonathan Dorr had a very Jonathan Dorr game. And they've been in, and other times I think the defense and the offense has bailed those guys out from their mistakes.
Oh, absolutely.
And that has happened. And in this game, man, it would have been nice if Jay Bramlett could have just, he had that 154-yard punt, or maybe it was a 53, and it was a great punt, right? And just boomed it, and he didn't have one of those again. And he was just missing, and it was just off. Yeah. And I mean, it sucks because it's just going to be his last game for Notre Dame too, and it's not a good one to remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think too, when you look at that the Dorr miss on a very makeable field goal, 41 yards, got to make that.
Yeah.
That was obviously a big one. And yeah, Bramlett was not good. He was as big of a reason, I think, for the defense never got in a good spot in they had short fields the entire second half.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, other than the very first kickoff, right? That's it. Right. And, it was just, they were kind of set up to not do well. And they couldn't. There was somebody, Foskey obviously made the one play, Drew White, and I would say Drew White, man, that guy's a warrior. He absolutely, he comes up with a big fumble, knocked the fumble out at the goal line there. I mean,
to me, I thought that was Kaiser. I thought Kaiser was the one who knocked it out.
It was White when they showed the replay, because I thought it was Kaiser.
Yeah, I thought when he reached in there, that's when he grabbed it and it started to go, the ball started to go, and then that's when White hit him and it lodged. But it seemed like when Kaiser reached in there, that's when the ball started getting loose to me. But I'll have to rewatch it. But when I looked at it, that's the way it looked to me. But
either way, it was a great play by both.
Yeah,
great play
exactly.
by both guys, right?
Yeah.
But if you think about that, those are two. both Stefosky things, that those are where they should have had more points.
Oh, I know.
It was domination
I know.
in the second half, and they just couldn't, and they were all on tilt, and there was just no one. Like there were so many opportunities, to get off the field and to do things, and they just couldn't.
Poor tackling, horrible tackling.
Well, yeah, and that to me it was just.
Well, you talk all off or all about going good on good. Well, I mean, what the heck? I mean, if you're going good on good and you're actually hitting, why is tackling so bad? It was so bad.
Well, I think in the second half, it had a lot to do with the guys being tired. But I mean, I would say J.D. Bertrand missed a lot of tackles this year.
In the very first game, in the very first half, I mean, he missed a bunch of tackles. And
so he was, I think, he didn't have a good game. DJ Brown has tackled better later in the year. But that looked like the DJ Brown when you're sitting against Florida State, right?
Yet he still played. I don't get it.
In the first half, that one play on a jet sweep, you're right in a position to make that play. And if he makes that play, like it's a tackle for loss. Instead, the guy scores a touchdown. That guy wasn't a burner either. No. You got to make that play. You just got it, right? And there was obviously that was a big problem. Like, I mean, I just think there's so many of those plays that were just like there for them. Like Bertrand obviously missed some tackles like in the hole, right? That's the one thing. If you're missing a tackle in space for JD Bertrand, I think you can live with it. You understand maybe he's not like the greatest athlete in space.
On that blitz. I mean, he had him dead to rights. You gotta make that play. Gotta make that play. And again, this is where I go back to, if I'm Marcus Freeman, I'm saying to the linebackers, everybody, the freshman linebackers, look, I like J.D. Bertrand, nice guy. Jack Kaiser, nice guy. I think both of them, certainly, I think Kaiser's an inside linebacker. I think that's where he needs to play, and will probably be moved there once they get some guys ready, but just not athletic enough. You just can't play with that kind of, limitations as much at linebacker, and they're not even when they blitz, they're not very effective because they miss so many of those opportunities to make plays in the backfield. I mean, countless linebacker opportunities to make plays in the backfield where they just flat whiffed, and I don't know. It's just frustrating. It really is frustrating. When you think of the offense, and I know that this is going to be a lot of people are going to have a lot of questions about this. People are going to say, "Well, why didn't Buckner play? Why didn't we see Buckner play?" What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I always think that's why you have to have a plan to get him in the game, and I understand why things are going well in the first half. Obviously, they're going really well in the first half. You scored 28 points. No team had scored 28 points on them and a half the whole year, right? And you throw for like 300 yards in the first half. I get it. I get why you're keeping Jack Cohn. He was playing exceptionally well in the first half, right? But then when you get into a situation, you couldn't put him in. So people are like, man, why aren't they putting Buckner in? Well, you can't put him in the fourth quarter of the game because you're setting this guy up who sat on the bench the whole game. You're setting him up to fail, right? And that's not fair to him. And it's not fair to the players on the team. You're saying all of a sudden you're going to go in. So that's why they needed to, when they got into different situations, is to just use him. So it's like 3rd and 2, the one where Logan Diggs was too patient and didn't hit it. Like that's a perfect 3rd and 2 when it's that kind of thing. That's a Buckner. Yeah. That's a Buckner situation, right? Yeah. Like, so to me, that's where they made a mistake, not getting Buckner involved. And then later on, when you're getting 3 and outs and you're not able to move the ball, well, it's too late. You can't just throw him in the third quarter and you're like, man, we need a score here. Just it's just completely unfair to the kid. And it's unfair to the team where all of a sudden you're just saying, okay, now we're throwing Tyler out here and he hasn't, is he going to just start warming up on the sidelines? And then what if he scores and then he stays they didn't handle it right by giving him more opportunities earlier in the game. And that's kind of the situation that they were put in.
I think the fact that Kyron didn't play, I think, is another big reason why you didn't see Buckner. I think if you would have seen Kyron in this game, Notre Dame would have had more Buckner because they would have been trying to run the ball. I mean, this was the longest game I think I've ever watched at Notre Dame. And it's just because Notre Dame didn't even try to run the ball. The clock would not bleed because they just didn't try to run the football. And I don't know. I don't even know what to say. The other thing that blows my mind is you're trying to get a pass rush. Where the hell's Jordan Botelho? I mean, the whole second half, you're not getting to the quarterback. Everybody's gassed, and Jordan Botelho's not playing. I don't get that.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense at all to me.
No, it doesn't make sense to me either, especially when, you're playing guys like Ahrensberger and Aiden Kayanina and and I don't mean it to
Nana. I mean, all these guys are playing.
But you have to put in situations and that's why I get why you're saying, okay, you're going to put him at Rover, but he didn't play at Rover in this game.
What was the point?
And I think it's pretty obvious he's at least got one of the highest potential out of the guys who isn't regularly rushing the passer. And he just didn't get those opportunities, right? So,
well,
and that's
to be honest, if I'm Jordan Botelho, I'm thinking about leaving. I really am. I'm seriously thinking about leaving if I'm Jordan Botelho. I really am.
Here's the thing with also too which is why I don't think it's a defensive line coach should ever be the defensive coordinator. And it's just my opinion. And I'm a D-line guy, and I'm not trying to discount like D-line coaches and saying they're not smart enough to do it or they can't handle the coverage or anything. I'm just saying it's the only position where you have to manage the rotations like at a different level than you have. And I'm sure in this game, they probably had, the assistant defensive line coach took more responsibility for that. But that's the one thing Mike Elston is responsible for normally. And that it would be a little bit, not his focus when he's trying to get the right call in. And especially when it's like tempo and they're getting killed and whatever. Right. So that's why too, I think it's so important to get that rotation right and to get, who you want out there on a certain series or you got a chance. Oh, get out there. At the end of the half, right? Why is Isaiah Foskey not out on the field this situation? That makes no sense.
Absolutely none.
Your best pass rusher on
and how many
the
times
field.
have they done that, Jamie? I mean, we've complained about that countless times.
And it's nothing against Justin Admiral. He's a good player, right? But when you're comparing apples to apples, you're not going to put him out on the field over Isaiah Foskey. And so all Isaiah Foskey had to do would get one pressure to just throw something off and throw that thing. And then just say, even if they settle for a field goal or whatever on that could change the complex.
The game was over. And I blew up on that last drive. I was very, very angry because I knew it was a momentum changing drive. Okay. Notre Dame had kicked the crap out of them all half. And then they let them come back and do this on the last series. And how many times do you have to do this before finally you say, you know what? We don't want to give them the momentum before you go in. Look, if you give up a play, you give up a play. And so what? You just gave up a play anyway by doing what you're doing. I just don't get the way they play the end of the half. And it bites them in the ass every time. It's just so frustrating. And to then not even have your best players out on the field when you're trying to make sure that you don't give them that momentum, it's inexplicable. I don't even understand why. It's so frustrating. Go ahead.
And especially in that situation where they weren't gassed and they didn't run that many plays in the first half. So it's not like, well, we need to give them a rest after the previous series. Well, no, Notre Dame just drove it on them and ate clock and had time. So I don't know. That was, and it's obviously it's something that has, to me too, whatever. And I think Mike Elston obviously has done a fantastic job overall as a defensive line coach. But that is always something that has bothered me in just situations where I'm like, when Kurt Hines was a sophomore, and then I'm like, why is he in on this red zone opportunity, right? You can understand why he is now, but in certain situations you have the number 2 D line in a situation where you're like, we need to stop here, get the number 1 guys out, and that's why you keep them fresh so you can put them in those situations, right? So I don't know. It's always perplexes me.
Yeah, I hear you. Now, it's one of these things where you just kind of and again, if you're look, I think part of Jordan Botelho, why they're a little bit scared, is sometimes he plays a little undisciplined, and you have a mobile quarterback who can hurt you with his legs. I get it, but when I look at the situation, and I say, okay, we're not having success anyway, so I might as well put somebody in there who at least has the ability to go get the quarterback. We may give up a
Somebody
big play.
Can make a play.
Yeah, exactly. And they weren't keeping contained. They weren't stopping him running the football anyway. And a lot of times he wasn't getting outside the pocket. He was running straight up the field. It wasn't a situation where he was scrambling way around the end and the defensive end didn't hold contain, or whoever had outside contain didn't hold contain. That wasn't the problem. They were running straight up the middle and getting a lot of yards. And I don't know. It's so frustrating to watch. This just should have never happened. The way this game unfolded just should have never happened. And I got to believe there are a lot of frustrated Irish fans. So let me ask you, if you're Marcus Freeman, what do you say to the team after this?
I mean, I think you say that, well, it's a whole new day, right? Like, basically, like, this hurts for right now. Thank you to the seniors for everything that you did. Sorry that we didn't get it done for you today. Wish we did more to get it done for you today. But, next season starts tomorrow. Like, we're obviously not good enough. We got to get after it. Everything's open. Yeah. We're going to push guys. We're going to, as he was saying, that we need to evolve, right? So I'm sure that's going to be the message. They're going to be like, we got to evolve, and it starts tomorrow, right? So that means talent-wise, like, you better believe that. I mean, especially with some of these guys like going in the portal right now, like after the bowl games, they're going to be hitting it heavy. It's going to be very, very busy in the next little bit. And then obviously the staff, there's going to be changes that are going to happen. Like, I mean, you would expect this week that if guys don't get named, well, it'll at least be leaked that this is going to happen, because obviously with Notre Dame, it's the process is slower than other places.
Yeah. I just don't even know what to say. There's just, I think Marcus Freeman has got a big problem on his hands, in that he's got to first of all, you look at the wide receivers today, and let's talk about probably the best thing that we saw today, which was the emergence of Lorenzo Styles. I mean, he's going to be a big-time player, and you need him. You absolutely need him, but you need to bring Lindsey back. You need to bring Austin back, and he's going to have to somehow convince these guys that they're going to do this. You need Patterson to come back. You need Foskey to come back. If you're going to have any chance to compete for a playoff spot next year, all those guys have to come back. And, a lot of people are like, oh, well, we got enough wide receivers. There's only 5. I mean, there's only 5 right now that are playing, right? And you're going to need a lot of these guys to come back. And everybody was so gassed today. You just can't have, that many guys getting that many reps, especially when you throw it 60 times. It's one thing to just stand out there and block. It's another one you have to run 40 yards downfield 60 times. I mean, that takes a lot of energy and a lot of gas.
Oh, and they're taking those deep shots.
And
I mean, I understand. So during the game, right at the end, and they're talking about how Lindsey's got to get off press and he's got to do a better job of being faster. And it's true. He didn't do a good job getting off press in this one. He got widened out on the deep shot. But that's the situation, because he's been running go routes for I don't know how many plays. And that's why I think when you look back on it, you say, obviously, even take out the guys like Jordan Johnson, Jay Brunel out of it. Yeah. But Lawrence Keys, Joe Wilkins, Avery Davis, like all those guys at the beginning of the year, they plan on playing all those guys. And that was the thing they talked about at the beginning of the year. Well, we're deeper. We rotate guys more. We're going to be able to if a guy runs like a fly route, we can bring another guy in. We're going to be fresh. And obviously at this situation where it was with the injuries and then Keys was out after the first week. So like they just weren't in a position to do that. They weren't in a position to do that. And they're going to have to. Austin, I think 100%. If he leaves, it's just because he just wants to get out. Like he's not ready. He's not ready yet. So
No.
I think with Lindsey, if he decides to leave, and he's a guy who's very much his own person, if he decides to leave, and just wants to pursue something else, maybe he'll do that. But if he wants to play in the league, I think he's got to come back. Right? He's got to have a chance to come back. He's not making the league right now, right? So I think it's going to be, you're going to have to sell those guys, but I think it shouldn't be that hard of a sell to get those guys and get them excited about coming back.
Well, they're going to play. There's no doubt they're going to play.
Yeah, they're going to play, right?
You're going to get an opportunity to make plays.
You're going to get a ton of opportunities, right? And
so let me ask you this: if you're Marcus Freeman, what do you do? Do you keep Dell? Do you move on? What would you do?
I think you would move on from Dell. I just think, and I know we've talked about, how the recruiting class shaked out, and it wasn't necessarily his fault, but the attrition and the managing of the roster, and obviously a couple of the guys get injured, but the reason why those injuries hurt is because the managing of the roster and him not landing in other classes.
No, I agree. Yeah,
that's right. And even if you think about like a guy like Deion Colsey, Notre Dame kind of backed into him coming back into the class, right? That was not a situation where, they did a great job. It was like, no, these other classes were kind of filling up. And then it was like, well, Colsey didn't have much of a choice. He had to kind of come back to Notre Dame. So it's just such a critical position that you just need multiple guys. You need multiple Lorenzo Styles. That's what you really need to be able to win in college football. And because as good as Styles is, like, you need more than just him. And which is why Austin, you got to get him back, and you got to have another guy. And Merriweather could be great, but if he's just one guy, like that's not enough, right? Like, and I can't see any way that Dell gets brought back. Maybe I'm wrong, right? Yeah. But I just can't see it.
I'd be surprised too for the reasons that you said, and they need to get some sort of excitement and something going in that group because they're not gonna, they're not going to. They're just not to the point where you can overcome the problems that they're having right now. There's just not enough talent there. And to be honest, there's just not enough bodies right now. And that's all on him. It is. It's all on him. And you got to have enough bodies, and then, hopefully the guys you recruit will stick around. There's a place where there's been a lot of attrition, and it's at his position. So I would be surprised if he's back, but you never know. You never know what's going to happen. The other thing I think this says is when you're looking for a quarterback, Jamie, if you get a guy like Vizzini, who I really like as a player, he's a really good player, and I think he moves a little bit better than Cone, as far as in the pocket.
Definitely, yeah.
But he's not, he's not a mobile kind of quarterback. You better be able to run the damn ball if you got a guy like him. And this is a perfect example of why you need to have a good running game when you have a quarterback like that. And Notre Dame has not been able to run the football effectively all year unless it was against a crap defense. Any good defense, they've just been abysmal running the football. And today it was so bad they didn't even try. And what does that say that you don't even try? You know what I mean? That it's kind of sad, really. You just kind of gave away half your offense because you didn't feel like you had any opportunity to run. Your thoughts?
Well, I think it's just one of those things where if they're giving it to you like they are in the first half, then that's fine. But when they're taking it away, you have to, and they're giving you something else, you have to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And that's why you just watched Alabama. They threw the ball. That's all they did against Georgia is they threw it. They chucked it around. But then they play Cincinnati. They knew they could bully them, and they ran the ball down their throats. And that's how they won the game. You got to be able to win every way. You got to be able to score every way. And Notre Dame doesn't have that. And that's why Spencer Sanders rushed for 125 yards in this game.
I know.
Like, that was a huge difference maker in the game.
Yeah.
Right. And and as much as you say, Jack Cohn threw for 500 yards. It's tough to
doesn't matter if you lose.
but it's tough to criticize someone when they throw for 500 yards
and 5 touchdowns.
But his limitations are his limitations, right? And it's just like we've said about like a Josh Lugg or a Kane Madden. These guys are playing hard, playing better at the end of the year, but their limitations are limitations. And so that's where the perfect example, Kane Madden. He's just very much struggles laterally. Beat a couple times bad.
The last
one.
Yeah,
that is the game.
It was
right?
the game. And
that
just
was the game.
Totally whiffed.
And you know what? And Jack Cohn did well to even get that, even give Austin a shot there. But it was just one of those situations where maybe if that's a more mobile guy, that guy turns that into something else too, right? And which is why Vicini, I like him as a prospect. I think he's a good player. And he's definitely, I wouldn't call him a statue, but to me, it's a very similar, maybe I would put him as like I think a higher ceiling Angeli, right? But I don't think you want 2 of those guys in back-to-back classes, which is why a Dante Moore and even an Avery Johnson, I understand he's got a lot of physical development too. Well, he's an electric runner. So that's something you can kind of build off of there too. And obviously, Jackson Arnold and, he's just a fantastic athlete too, but you need an athlete there. You need an athlete like Spencer Sanders. Like we said at the beginning, he's not a good thrower of the football. But he's a heck of an athlete, learns to escape. And his athleticism was what helped them win the game.
Well, it's he won the game essentially. We kind of joked about him leading into this game. I didn't think that Notre Dame would let him get comfortable. I didn't think that their offensive line would do as good a job, keeping Notre Dame's pass rush out as they did. And they did a great job too of picking up stunts and blitzes. And Notre Dame did try and pressure them. They just weren't effective. And, look, you can say whatever you want about tempo, but those offensive linemen got to play the same amount of plays as everybody else. They play the entire game too. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, those guys are out there battling every single play, and they were just much more effective at it. And that kid won the game for him. He really did. Tip my hat to him. He played almost flawlessly. He really did. And
second half for sure. Yeah.
And what can you do? And again, he missed some easy throws, as we talked about.
Yeah.
But he was able to overcome those.
And you know what he did fantastic in this game was in the Baylor game, he threw up these balls that were, picked off. And he did in this game, he avoided so many sacks where he threw the ball away.
Yeah.
And was just smartly threw the ball away. Right. And that mattered a lot. And that's the thing you just don't get from someone if you don't have that, someone with his mobility.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I wanted to ask you, did you get a chance to check out Blake? How do you think he played?
I thought Blake Fisher played pretty well.
I did too.
I can't believe.
Somebody will say they gave up that sack, but that wasn't on him. Cohn held the ball too long. That was not on him. Yeah, Cohn held the ball too long. That was a covered
sack.
Yeah,
that was a covered sack. And if that was, another mobile guy, he would have ran and got like 5-6 yards or whatever, right?
Oh, so sure.
That was definitely not. And I thought he did a great job. If they're talking about how, this guy running the hoop. Well, that's a wide hoop. No one was getting around the edge around him.
No doubt.
I thought he did a really, really nice job.
And you let that guy go that far up the field if you want.
Oh, yeah.
If he wants to go that far up the field, that's a huge
Your
lane for a quarterback.
Knows pocket,
Yeah.
that's there, right?
You let him go that far up the field every time if you can get him to do that, you know?
So I thought Blake Fisher, like, I mean, obviously we'll go back and watch it and stuff, but I mean, considering and Alt too, you know, his sack too was another one where I thought that was more coverage, not necessarily on him. And I thought both those guys, like, I mean, if you're going to get excited about something on offense, get excited about those guys. But Blake Fisher, I can't believe he had to play that many plays in this game.
You had to know he'd be gassed too. You know what I mean?
Oh, he was gassed.
Yeah.
He was gassed.
Yeah. But still was battling. Yeah.
Still was battling. Yeah. And like,
can you imagine how good that guy's going to be?
Oh, he's just scary.
Especially when he gets into, like, when they start using him in the run game, like he'll be able to. You know, once he gets coached up a little bit, man, he's just going to be a dominant player. And Notre Dame's got two outstanding, and I mean outstanding tackles. And I think Kristofic is coming along. You know, I don't think he's an elite guard at this point, but I think he's pretty solid. You know, and you bring Patterson back, and you got a lot of guys there, so there's a lot to work with. And of course, Styles, I think, is going to be a special player. You know, I think Colsey, once he gets a little bit of a experience and stuff, he's going to be a solid player. There's a lot to like on offense. There's no question about it, but it's just, I don't know. I have to, you know, and a lot of people are going to blame a lot of things in this thing. You know, for Tommy Rees, I have to say I'm disappointed with the second half. You know, I'm not sure that there was a whole lot more you could do, but there were things that you could do. I think that, you know, and again, I'm sure he wanted to go tempo with Cone. I'm sure he wanted to. But then you look at the defensive line and how gassed they are, that if you go 3 and out, you're giving up a touchdown immediately. So it's hard for him to do that. But the alternative was, because you didn't do it, you didn't do anything anyway, and you still lost the game. So it's a tough call. He was dealt a bad hand in that he had absolutely no running game. And, you know, Cone was certainly not as effective in the second half. And, so I think his hands were kind of tied, but still 0 points. You even score one touchdown, you win the game. Yeah. One touchdown in the second half, and you win the game. Yeah. Well, field goal in the second half, you win the game.
Yeah, and obviously they had the 2 turnovers inside the Oklahoma State 40, which were just killer. But I would say the one thing, if I was going to...
But that was the thing. Why I sent you a text, and I'm like, why are you running the ball? Why would you give a freshman running back the opportunity to run the football there? Why?
Yeah.
You haven't been effective running the ball the entire game, and you're going to give a freshman running back the opportunity to run the football. I don't understand that call at all.
And I think that I usually I would say with Rees, one of the things he does really well is he usually kind of brings some like creativity to the run game, where there's something that we haven't seen from week to week that he inserts for a specific game. And I mean, we don't really see that. Maybe he had stuff in his back pocket, but he was like, this is going to work.
Yeah.
And maybe he threw it out. So that might've been the case. But yeah, I mean, and again too, that's why to not having Buckner or not having that element there, because really, if you think about it, I mean, if you look at the running game with Jack Cohn the whole season, and you compare it to when just took the snaps that Buckner was in and the running game with him, and then the running game with Jack Cohn, it's a significant difference, right? They don't have to defend the quarterback, right? Yep. And that's something that I don't know, like, could they have done more? Maybe he just thought, man, our guys are overmatched. Maybe that's what he thought, but it obviously just, it was frustrating to have it play out that way.
You know, it was sad because it was turning out to be a really nice story for Jack Cohn, you know, and it would have been kind of a storybook ending for him. And I feel bad because the guy's a warrior. You know, he did everything he could. You know, he is who he is. And unfortunately, Notre Dame didn't have a team that could limit his limitations. And but you got to give that guy a ton of credit. I mean, he played his ass off all year, never hung his head, you know.
Oh yeah.
Definitely a Notre Dame guy. I'll always be a fan of his. Did everything he can to be and you know, God bless the guy. I hope he has an NFL career and all that type of stuff. But I don't know. Okay, folks. Well, if you're out there and you have questions, feel free to type in their question, and then Jamie and I will answer it. Looks like we've had a couple of idiots in the chat, so I've had to ban a couple already, and I'm sure there'll probably be more as it comes. Yeah. But that's the way it is. So if you have questions, feel free to ask, and we'll do whatever we can. While we're waiting, Notre Dame got one of the best commitments. I love this kid. I love this kid. This was a big-time pickup. I wish you were coming this year because I think he'd start. I really think he'd start. I really do. Yeah. I mean, he's just got to.
Let's get some summer school classes going.
Yeah, exactly. Can we get him to roll today?
He really is exceptional.
We didn't see X Watts much, by the way. I didn't see him much in the.
I didn't see him much in the second half.
Yeah, I don't get that at all.
Had really good coverage on one play where a guy made a heck of a catch.
Yeah.
But no, didn't see him a lot in the second half.
Don't understand that.
And really too, like X Watts and Henderson, their development is going to mean so much for Notre Dame, and also too, like Portal at the safety position, like that's going to mean so much for Notre Dame, really, like, because, and that's why you want with Bowen, why you'd be so excited. Like guys like Bowen and Rhett, like these are great athletes, and you wish that they were there because they need those type of athletes. That's what they're missing, really, is that speed. And that's why you want to see Watts, because he does have that kind of athleticism that you need back there, and you hope to see more of.
All right, we're going to hit some questions here. First question, was not punting a terrible call at the end? And honestly, is this a college coaching and experience across the board that cost ND this particular game? I understand why he went for it. I probably would have punted, but look, your defense has played like crap the entire game. Why would you have faith that they'd stop him? You may not even get the ball back at that point. So I totally get the reason why. The defense has been the reason that you've been good all year, and I would probably put my you go all in. My faith in them versus Notre Dame converting on that situation. But I totally get the reason why. Anything you want to add, Jamie?
I thought they should have punted there, just because if they don't get it, they still have 3 timeouts. The game's over, right? Because they just have to make a chip shot field goal, right? So that's what I thought, and I thought that was a game management error. But I do understand in the moment too, like being like, we can't get a stop.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. And so it's just one of those things. I don't think it was that kind of game management coaching. That was not the reason they lost the game.
Yeah. No, I agree. That wasn't the reason they lost for sure. I mean, they lost for a lot of other reasons.
For a lot of other reasons.
Yeah. Excuse me. Next question. Are you surprised Indy did not try Buckner a series or try to ignite the run game? Yeah, we kind of talked about that. I think we probably were. And again, I think if Kyron would have played, we would have saw a lot more Buckner in this game, I believe. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think it's funny because I think they've always been like, oh, we need a jump start. And they didn't need a jump start in the first half. And I think that's the biggest reason why he didn't get in.
And then once the game was kind of going, it's hard to get him in unless you absolutely need him. Next question, how would you rate Blake Fisher in the first game? Yeah, we talked about that. I think he did a heck of a job, for all things considered. I mean, look, the guy hadn't played for a long time. It's not just that he hadn't played. I mean, you're just not in shape. And then to come out and play that many reps, I mean, that was a lot of...
His first full college football game. Yeah. And he's got to play 90 plays or whatever.
Yeah. And against a pretty good defense. That front four is solid. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's see what we got here. Next one. Any names on a replacement for Dell? Are we thinking a running back coach with Taylor moving to wide receiver or new wide receivers coach? Again, I think that stuff will start to pop up now. We'll start hearing a lot more about that now. But I mean, I think Taylor's done a good job at wide receiver. So if you can get an elite running backs coach, if that makes more sense, maybe that's the case. But I'd like to see them get a real elite wide receivers coach, because in order for Notre Dame to get over the hump, they got to start landing elite wide receivers and developing them. And so I just think that if you want to get over the hump, that really needs to happen. And hopefully we'll see that. All right. All right. So I saw this one when we were talking about Xavier Watts. Some guy in the chat's name is Xavier Watts. He's like, I'm right here, Mike. Pass me the rock. Isn't that the truth, man? All right. Let's see. Well, we've already kind of addressed this before. Who would you guys like for defensive coordinator? Jimmy, you go ahead.
I mean, there's like a bunch of guys that on my list that I like. I really like the Houston guy. I mean, I know he just got a raise he's getting like $1 million a year now, but obviously Notre Dame could probably double that or pay him like a pretty significant raise if they want him. He's done an outstanding job with their defense. Belk, is his name. Chenander, the Nebraska guy, is a really, really good coach. I
like him. He is a very good coach. Yes.
And also too, like did a great job at UCF as well there. And I don't know, like I think I think it's important that like Marcus Freeman had said, that they keep the terminology, right? That it's not somebody who's coming in and doing something so drastic, because you don't want to put it all of a sudden you're saying, well, you know what, someone who put their stamp on it, but not, you got to keep it in place, because if you're all of a sudden you're learning 2 defenses in 2 years, and then what happens if that guy leaves? And right, like you have to have some kind of continuity, and that's the one thing that I think really helped with that Mike Elko to Clark Lee transition and him being there for that long, right? And we saw how kind of things took a little while for the transition this year, right? So, I think it's important that they hire a guy who, doesn't necessarily have to run exactly Marcus Freeman's system, but it's got to be similar.
Were you surprised, at some point, do you think Marcus should have kind of taken over the defensive play calls in the second half? What do you think there? I mean, I sometimes go ahead.
I think he should have.
Yeah,
I think he should have.
I think so too.
I understand
why he didn't.
Why he didn't, and because that's the kind of thing where you could lose Mike Elston.
Yeah,
you could lose him. Period. After that, right? Even if he knows that maybe he's not going to be the defensive coordinator, like he's like, I didn't even get my chance to kind of climb out of this hole, right? And I think that's one of the things too. And I know it's like, it wasn't a meaningless game, but definitely this is the kind of game, really, it's more of an exhibition where you get to kind of learn about certain guys and certain coaches, and they're put into different roles, and special teams with Nick Lazinski and stuff too. And obviously he's Dorr and Bramlett has nothing to do with Nick Lazinski.
Yeah, sure.
Every other piece of it and how that's evaluated, that's going to be like coverage was good on kicks and stuff. But so that's going to be part of it. And you have to be able to do that. And if Marcus Freeman, especially if he wants to recruit like he wants to recruit, and be so involved, he's going to have the trust of whoever's doing it to kind of run it the way that it needs to be run. Yeah. Right. So, I think he should have, probably in hindsight, he probably should have taken over, but at the same time, I
understand why he didn't. Yeah. And that was the same thing I was thinking the whole way watching it, going, I wonder, the temptation's got to be strong to be stepping in. And I think this next question is interesting. Does Indy lose this game if Brian Kelly is still on the sidelines? And I don't think they lose it, but I don't think it's because of Brian Kelly. I think it's because Marcus Freeman is calling the defense, and you have a lot of the same situation.
Well, also, is Marcus Freeman the head coach at Duke or something, right? Like,
well, that's true.
There's all those other things, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely, that could have happened. And it was funny. I was talking to my wife the other night, and we were watching Cincinnati, and she's like, it's crazy to think that if Notre Dame didn't beat Cincinnati, Brian Kelly's not going anywhere. And that's true. He wouldn't have, he wouldn't have left in the middle of.
He wouldn't have.
So, we'd still have Brian Kelly if Notre Dame didn't lose to Cincinnati. And that's just kind of a wild thing to think about when you think about it. All right. Let's see. I tried to add it here. Why didn't it not? Okay. Do you think Indy failed to make the necessary adjustments at the half on both sides of the ball? Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't think that they did very good job on either side of the ball in the second half. So
yeah, but I think mostly if I'm going to say with the defense, a lot of that stuff is how you're going to respond to it once you get into the second half and what you're going to do in between series. And that's what you kind of have to do, especially with the way they were running Sanders more. And maybe it was just a thing where it's like, well, we don't have the time to do it because the offense was going 3 and out. And it was like, really short drives and you weren't maybe having the time to put that into place. Yeah. I mean, anytime you say how can you argue against it? Look at what happened in the second half.
Yeah, no doubt. Next question. Any word on what James Laurinaitis' role will be for the Indy defense? I don't know. I would think he'd probably be working with the linebackers. I don't know. So my guess is you'll hire a coach who's a defensive coordinator, and he'll be the linebackers guy, but you'll have Laurinaitis, who really is working a lot with the linebackers. Wouldn't you say that'd probably be the?
Yeah. I would be shocked if he's not working with the linebackers in some capacity.
Yeah.
So as an analyst, a grad assistant, whatever, he's going to be working with the linebackers.
Yep. All right. When can we expect a full staff in place? I would guess that would probably happen within a week, wouldn't you? I'm sure that Marcus Freeman's probably already had a lot of conversations with some guys, and I think you'll see some names pop up real quick, and there'll probably be some hires real quick, I'd guess.
Yeah, I would say maybe we don't get official word for a couple weeks with some of the guys because you know how Notre Dame's weird process. Thanks George O'Leary for that. But I think I would be surprised by the end of the week if we don't hear most of the names that kind of fill out the staff.
All right. Question. Do you think Indy missed Polian? I don't think so. No. I don't think the two specialists just didn't have a big game. I don't think Polian could have talked them into having a good game. It just is what it is. Surprising, but is what it is. Question. We all hated the way the 2020 or how the season ended. Can you give us something to be optimistic about in 2023? Sure. I mean, I think recruiting is going to be really good in 2023. I think things are really starting to trend, maybe even better than I thought it would. We'll see once they kind of get back out on the road and who actually shows up for junior days. But things are really cooking at recruiting. Lorenzo Styles, certainly something to be excited about. The two offensive tackles, certainly somebody to be excited about.
You got another year of Michael Mayer.
Yeah, exactly.
That's going to be pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. And, so there's a lot of things that I think that could be exciting.
Healthy Maris Liafu.
Can't wait to see him. Can't wait. Yeah. And boy, do they miss him. Man, do they need him bad. They really need him bad. So we'll see. All right, see if we got some more questions here. All right. Jamie, how do you handle tempo from the offense?
I mean, the only thing you can do is you have to get them off schedule, right? You have to get them off schedule because as soon as they get first downs, they're on the ball, right? They're on the ball. And the only way it's like easy to say, we'll get off the field, right? So then they can't do it. But to get teams off the field, you usually have to get them off schedule. And that usually means like getting a negative play.
Yeah.
That's, in creating like a tackle for loss, a turnover or whatever. But that's what you got to do. You have to be able to find that there. And it's really tough. That's why it's so tough when a team gets going, right? And this team, they were one of the top tempo teams in the country. It's one thing that they did really, really well on offense is they ran a ton of plays all year. And, I think the main thing is, you just have to be able to get first down. Absolutely have to get them first down because if it's second and long, that changes the playbook. It changes what they're going to do with tempo. If it's all of a sudden 2nd and 3, everything's opened up and they can do whatever they want.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Next question. Did the flow of the game change early when we didn't go for it on fourth at our own 40? I think the game changed is the last drive in the second half or the first half. I think that is really where the game changed. I wouldn't have probably gone for it on that 40th there because you were up. You were up big. Your defense was doing the job.
Playing great at that time. Yeah.
So there was really no reason to kind of panic there. So I wouldn't have gone for it there. I think that was a good call. I just think that they just melted down right at the half. And then once that happened, they just didn't do a good job of handling it. They just didn't. And I think Oklahoma State outcoached Notre Dame in the second half. I really do.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, well, we don't. That was a question. Let's see. Yeah, we got some guys here that are. All right, I'm getting tired of this guy. Let's ban him. All right. Boy, we're getting a lot of crazy questions here. All right. Good question here. If John Heacock is named the new defensive coordinator, how do you react? What do you think, Jamie?
I think he's a good coach. He certainly doesn't excite you from like a youth perspective. He's not a young guy. He's not like the most gregarious recruiter from what I know about him. But he's a good coach.
Yeah.
He's a pretty good coach. And I think one thing you don't realize or a lot of people don't realize is he's playing pretty good defense with Iowa State talent.
Yeah.
So I think they could certainly do a lot worse than John Heacock if he was the guy. I don't know that he is, but I mean, he certainly would be on my list of guys that they should definitely give a long look at if they're still looking.
Yeah. I don't know how I'd feel about that. There's part of me that wants an experienced guy so Marcus Freeman can focus on being a head coach and not always looking at the defensive side of the ball because he's concerned about what's going on. So that's why it's like I'm not sure. I'm sure Mike Mickens may be a great defensive coordinator down the road. I just don't know if that's a good time to hire him right now. And I don't, I would be concerned with a first-time defensive coordinator being hired right now. I really would.
I agree with that.
And I think today is the reason why. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think today, if you look at what happened today, that's the reason why. And so I really hope you get somebody with some experience. But also I'd like to see somebody with a little bit of, I guess, a little bit of time left on their coaching career. How long is Heacock going to be there? And I think if you want to build something, you want to get a guy that can be there for a while. And so we'll see. Question, moving forward, paint a picture of what happens next, recruiting, assistant coaching hires, and so on. What do you think, Jamie?
Well, I think, you'll start to hear assistant coaches. That's the next thing, right? Where we're going to hear like, well, they're parting ways with him, or this guy's going to be the next. It's going to happen fast.
Yeah.
So I think that's the next part that's going to happen. And then I think what you saw, so they just offered obviously the 2022 wide receiver, the kid out of Oregon. You're going to see probably, I would guess, maybe a couple more wide receiver offers in 2022. That's going to be a priority. And probably portal, you'll start to hear guys will make visits will happen soon.
Yeah.
Very soon.
Yeah. Well, and two, I think what you'll see is what happens is they have that coaching clinic or coaching convention that's going to pop up here shortly. And that's when you'll start to see, the names and everything. You'll start to see, I'm going to guess that these guys will probably be hired early next week, actually, I would guess. And then it's all going to be full steam ahead recruiting, and we'll see what happens. So, all right, hang on a sec. Trying to find some more questions here, Jamie. All right, because we only got a few minutes. You got to get back to doing your thing here, too. So, all right, interesting. This is a good question. Can you break down who you think will enter the transfer portal for Notre Dame? Let me pull this up. Let me get like a. Let's see. I mean, I think that there are some names. We already know Kari Gee is in there. We already know that Litchfield Ajavon is. It'll be interesting to see what happens at defensive back. Will a Caleb Offord be a guy that bounces? Will a JoJo Johnson, because, he probably won't get a whole lot of playing time. I'd guess a KJ Wallace. I would guess maybe an Osita Nwanku. Well, I think it depends. He'll probably be a guy that's pretty close to graduating. So I think if he's going to bounce, I think he'll probably be maybe next year. We already know Shane Simon is in there. Trying to think. D-line, anybody that stands out to you, Jamie?
No, not out of the. I think for the most part, most of those guys are gonna stay.
What about O-line?
O-line, I could easily see. I mean, John Durson. I don't know if he's gonna still play football, but if he does, I imagine that he will go in the portal.
Yeah. Wouldn't be surprised that Quinn Carroll did.
Quinn Carroll's top of mind for me because he's obviously a guy who. This is a situation where they went down to right tackle. He was number 2 on the depth chart, and then all of a sudden Blake Fisher got pushed up, and he might see the writing on the wall of where things stand for him. So I could see it definitely. I think him and Dirksen are probably the only guys who really stick out.
Yeah,
there out of that group, and then Sibo obviously I would be shocked if he came back.
All right. We're going to maybe 2 more. We'll be done. Question: why did Freeman not call timeout? This was something I was thinking too. And in the third quarter to regroup and settle when OSU they were so gassed. I would have called timeout. Yeah. And guess what?
I think that is another. That's another first-time head coach.
Yep.
But I mean, in saying that, I mean, you see like.
Lots of
long-time head coaches make that mistake, but I'm a big believer in that.
When things are going bad,
momentum. When things are going bad, and your players are on tilt,
especially if they're running tempo,
kind of reset. Yeah. Like I just think you're better off just taking that chance and whatever. And if you eat a timeout at the end of the game, so be it. Because if you have a couple timeouts in the end of the game, that's fine. But to use one in that capacity, I think it's not often enough. And I think. Mike Vrabel, who, obviously is a Tennessee Titans, like he's fantastic at just like knowing when to take a timeout at the right time and be like, okay, we need this, just calm down here for a second. Like, and it's funny because that's using like in basketball, they do it all the time. In hockey, that's like, there's one timeout in hockey. Like they call it like all of a sudden you're down 2-0 real quick. They call a timeout because they're like, okay, let's regroup here, whatever. Right. Like, so unless you're doing that, or unless you're like faking injuries in order to like kind of slow them down.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I'll give Notre Dame respect for not doing that because that easily would have been something that a lot of teams did. And I think people thought that Jason Admiral, like he's not a guy who would lie down and fake an injury. He's definitely not one of those guys. So, but yeah, if you're not doing that, then you want to take a timeout. I think it would have been smart.
Yep. All right, this is we're going to end with this one here because again, Jamie's got to get his writing done, and I got to do some stuff too. All right, this question: do you think Marcus Freeman will give more access to the media next year? Yeah, I do. I actually think we'll get more, and I will say I believe that I've been doing it a while. Brian Kelly gave us a ton of access compared to other coaches. I think Marcus Freeman will give us even more, just based off of some things I've heard. Anything you want to add?
And I also think that he's going to give us more access to the assistant coaches.
Yeah.
Because that has been something that under Brian Kelly, it was like the once a year thing, basically, or you get it in the spring once then, and then you'd also get the Notre Dame Media Day, and you'd get all the coaches. Well, and I think they kind of used the excuse of COVID to kind of, they could have done with something with Zoom for those coaches, and they didn't, right? And really, just so like Chris O'Leary speaking before this bowl game, it's the first time anyone heard him.
Yeah,
right? No one had a chance to talk to him, right? So, and especially because if these guys all have certain goals. They want to be a defensive coordinator one day. They want to be a head coach one day. A lot of them have those goals. Well, you're not helping them by not allowing them to speak to the media, right? Yeah. If you can't trust your coaches to speak to the media, then you got way more problems than anything else. So I think that's what we're going to see more is more access to that. And we'll see those guys talk. It won't be just, Mike Elston because he's recruiting it or talking on this day. It'll be more of those position coaches. I wouldn't say all the time throughout the season, but I would say in the off season, I think it's spring we'll be able to get them.
I will say I am glad and thankful that Marcus Freeman got the opportunity to coach this game, and I would have hated the first game that he coached to happen in Columbus. You know what I mean? I think that this is something that's very, very important that people won't really think about, but just to get this experience under your belt, and also just kind of trying to manage all of this, and I think that this will be a very big learning thing for him, and I'm sure he learned a lot today. What do you think he learned?
Well, I think he learned he's probably going to look back on every single one of those situations and say, what could I have done differently here? Like taking that timeout there. Like, I think that's how everyone learns everything, right?
Absolutely.
You make mistakes and you learn from it, right? So I think all these situations, he's going to learn, like, maybe I should have been more involved with the defense, right? He's going to learn, like, maybe I shouldn't have, I should have put more focus on this instead of that and stuff, like in terms of preparation, like, and he's learning, right? It's the first time that he's going to have to do that. You'd rather him make these mistakes now than, because let's face it, this game matters. Yeah, it matters, right? But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter like that Ohio State game is going to matter next year.
Yeah.
So you hope that all the things that ended up happening with the loss here, he learns from it. They all learn from it, and then they get better from it.
All right, folks, that's going to be it. Jamie and I will be back next week. We're going to have just kind of a YouTube with just him and I talking about some things, so be looking for that. And then Jamie's doing a bunch of stuff with Greg as well. And, we'll have a lot of kind of stuff we'll be talking about, wrapping up the season, recruiting, all that type of stuff. If you're not a member of irishsportsdaily.com, great time to sign up, folks. It's if you've never been a member, it's $49.95 for the entire year right now. So take the time to sign up, and we'll have a lot of fun now that Marcus Freeman's the head coach. Recruiting's going to go gangbusters, I feel, and then can't wait for spring practice. So that's going to be it. Thanks for watching, and we will talk to you again soon on Power Hour first, and then we'll be back on YouTube Live as well. Thanks for watching.